Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Jorge, and welcome to Fourth and Frames, the fantasy football podcast for fantasyandframes.com. We are kicking off our third season. And you know what? I thought, let's start this third season off with a bang and get a couple quality guests on here. And you know what? We have our own version of Mike and Mike this evening. Got Michael Hauff from the FF Faceoff. Sir, how are you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. And of course, we all know friend of the show, friend of Fantasy and Frames, Mr. Michael Bauer of the Dynasty Rewind podcast. How are you?
Good evening, Jorge. How are we tonight?
Man, there's normally when we're talking during the fantasy football season, there's just so much going on and everything is so fluid. But, now we're in the playoffs. Now we're coming up on championship weekend, and we really have just four things to focus on, four games. But I think these games are going to be probably, I don't want to say scrutinized, but probably the most built up in recent memory, because you have the old guard competing against one another, two of the greats, Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. You got the new guard with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. One way or another, we're going to get new versus old in the Super Bowl. And I think this is, everyone says divisional weekend is the best weekend in football. I think this year it's conference championship weekend. I think you're not going to get any better than this. What do you guys think, Mike? Let's start with you.
Yeah, I always think about my brother when championship week comes around, because he always says championship weekend is his favorite weekend in all of football. It's not the Super Bowl. It's not divisional. It's not wild card. It's not week one. He loves championship Sunday. There's a lot of finality to it. There's a lot of excitement to it. We're going to the big dance. So, yeah, I'm pumped for it. And, I'm just going to say out loud now, I think it's going to be the Buffalo Bills and the Green Bay Packers.
So. Really? Do you think this is because Mahomes may or may not play, or do you think Buffalo's defense and offense is just clicking on all cylinders?
I think even if Mahomes plays, Mahomes got that foot injury too as well. If you remember, he was hobbling around quite a bit before he was out. And I don't think the Chiefs defense is all that wonderful. And I think that the Bills are going to be able to take advantage of that. And, guys like Anthony Servino, if he's listening out there, Anthony, you old school son of a gun, you always want to run the ball. Well, the Bills don't need to do that. And I think the Bills are going to compete. They're going to go toe-to-toe, and they're going to go blow for blow, and I think they're going to find themselves in the Super Bowl.
Not to mention, who's running the ball besides Chad Henne in Kansas City? Darrell Williams, is that who you're counting on to save the day in the running game? I mean,
exactly.
You brought in Le'Veon Bell. You thought that's a thing. That's not a thing. He's like the LaShawn McCoy of 2020, to be honest with you. Mike, we'll go with Mike with Michael Hauff and Michael with Mike Bauer.
Just use
Michael.
Bauer.
Just use Bauer.
Just go with Bauer. Okay.
Yeah.
Everyone knows you.
Because I'm bound to get tripped up. I mean, the more I consume here, the more I'm going to jump in the wrong way. So
very nice. All right, Bauer. Who are you taking in the NFC Championship?
First of all, I want to say that I think draft weekend is the most exciting weekend. But I am a dynasty guy, so that's probably
you are. I don't think we mentioned that so far.
We have a few times. Personally, I think it's going to be Bills, and I'm hoping it's the Buccaneers. And I'm not saying that to appease my friend Anthony Servino. I'm saying that because wouldn't it be poetic justice if the Bills beat Tom Brady, a guy who terrorized that division for 20 years, if they beat them in the Super Bowl? Wouldn't that be great?
That would be something.
I mean, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
So a little poetic justice there,
And again, if it's Kansas City and Green Bay, I'm not going to be surprised either, to be honest with you. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is he's lighting it up right now, and he looks great. So
he's hands down the MVP, right? Is anybody going to debate any other?
Rodgers? I think Rodgers is the MVP, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know who else could be.
I mean, Allen would be the only other name you could throw in there, but I would give it to Rodgers. I'm just saying, if there's a name somebody wants to throw in there.
Yeah.
Right.
Between the two.
I mean, either way, Jorge, you said it. I mean, between the young quarterback versus the old quarterback dynamic, whether it's, just like Barrow was talking about with Tom Brady going up against a former division rival, and imagine that. And either way, the Super Bowl will not be without any sort of juicy storylines. They'll have something to talk about.
Exactly what they want. Did you guys see what Colin Cowherd said?
No.
Yeah, but he's a stupid person.
They said that
I'm not sure what kind of language I'm allowed to use here, so I'll just leave it.
You can go with whatever you want, man.
Okay,
He
fair enough.
said that the NFL should wait to play the AFC Championship game until whenever Patrick Mahomes is ready.
Oh, okay. Well, because that's going to happen, right?
Yeah,
I'll tell you what he said. This is also Colin Cowherd, so grain of salt, big grain of salt. You know how that guy is. He's a jerk.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Well,
you talk about running
I
things
was
smooth.
just going to simply say some people get paid off of bad takes, and some people aspire to reach that so-called mountaintop. So Colin's up there with a nice cigar, I'll admit, but he's up at the mountaintop making all the bad takes, and that's how he gets paid.
I mean, Fox Sports really shells out the money for I don't know about not so great quality content when you're really thinking about it.
Right.
He had that nice cushy job at ESPN, and then of course that crashes and burns, and goes over to Fox Sports and can spew all he wants to spew. Not a big fan of Colin Cowherd, in case you all haven't picked up on that yet. Mike, you mentioned a sense of normalcy this time of year. But what's not normal is going into 2021. No NFL combine, no gathering in Indianapolis this year. All the schools are going to have pro days, and it's basically a film study person's wet dream, so to speak, here when it comes to fantasy football analysis and takes and draft Twitter and all that jazz. From a dynasty perspective, how does that make your life easier or harder, Bauer?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, you have the combine. The combine was a little skewed last year too, because the NFL, in their infinite wisdom of trying to just market themselves and whore themselves to death, all they care about is money. They don't care about player safety. They don't care about you. They don't care about me. They care about money. That is it. So they decided to make the combine prime time. There have been studies that show that you run better when it's earlier. So a lot of these guys suffer time. They're doing drills and running at 10, 11 o'clock at night. So I think you're going to see better athletic performances. And then you're going to have a lot of people saying the 2021 class is better than 2020, 2019. No, these guys are at home. They're where they're comfortable. You're also going to see skewed times as well, because we've all seen that pro day times and pro day measurements and all that are never as accurate as the combine times and measurements. So this, to me, is not going to be a good analytical draft. If you're an analytical guy, you got to use your eyes. Got to see what these guys do on the field. How do they play against their competition? To me, that's the important thing. So, Twitter is just going to be a nasty place about the combine, just like it is about
Everything.
So it's just one more place to think. Mike and I know that real well. It's just add one more thing to stir into the pot of the Twitter sphere. So it should be interesting.
We're not a basketball show, but I just think it's interesting that the NFL can't produce a safe environment for 1 week in Indianapolis, but March Madness is going to go full throttle in Indianapolis this year. That boggles the mind a little bit with how successful the NFL has been at screening this year and making sure that games are played on time, relatively on time, or at least not postponed weeks in advance, weeks later. I'm surprised. I'm really surprised by this move.
Did they really try?
That's what I was thinking. I mean, like, maybe this is the NFL just kind of saying, you know what, we need to just take a mental breath. We got this season off, and we didn't even think we were going to be able to do this. Let's just ride this COVID thing out and wait till it goes away. And like, maybe that's part of their thinking. I mean, yeah, that could be it. I mean, does March Madness have anything to see? I know. I mean, March Madness, so I know it's March. I know that.
Right. So there's some time between now and then to.
It's not going to screw with the combine. It wouldn't screw with the combine at all, right? Combine's always late February.
No. I just was referring to how.
Well, I was wondering, because isn't it in Indianapolis this year?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So it's the same venue can hold March Madness, but can't hold the combine. That's just weird to me.
Yeah.
Speaking of weird or not weird, you can head over to. Fourth and Frames on Twitter to follow us, as well as at Fantasy and Frames. This year in 2021, we're going to be adding Dynasty content, as we mentioned earlier. Dynasty, IDP, Redraft. You can find it all here at fantasyandframes.com. And when it comes to Dynasty fantasy football content, Bauer, you have something to announce to the masses?
Yes, I'm going to be working with the Fantasy and Frames crew. We're going to help them get their Dynasty content launched. So it's going to be, who is it? You, me, Teddy.
Yumi, Teddy, and Jonathan, our friend, one of our writers over in the UK, is all on board with that. So we're looking forward to pumping out all that content for you. With us here at Fantasy in the Frames, we want to separate ourselves from all the other fantasy football websites out there and blogs out there. And it's one thing to tell you what to do. It's another thing to explain to you why and how to make you a better player at the game. So we really want to, tailor our content to making sure that we get across the point of why we're telling you, as opposed to just telling you that. So we look forward to doing that in Dynasty, IDP, and Redraft. Look for our first articles in Dynasty to drop really, really soon, as well as, all our podcasts now are going to be incorporating Dynasty. So we're really pumped up about that. Let's get to today's show topic. Let's discuss now some running backs that finished as RB2s and RB3s that this past fantasy football season in weeks 1 through 17 total points. Which one of these guys can really have the potential to jump up to an RB1 status in 2021? Let's start with Mike. Mike, what are your thoughts here? Who finished outside the top 12 that you think can jump inside the top 12?
I honestly, and this might be a homer take, but whatever. I think that given the amount of injuries that we had with the 49ers, I think that we're allowed to be, I feel like, here's the thing. We're going to start to get into a lot of off-season content, all these podcasts and websites, and we're all going to talk about bounce-back candidates. And a lot of them are going to come out of San Francisco. And why? Because they dealt with a slew of injuries. So they were behind the 8 ball from the get-go. And they're in a Kyle Shanahan offense. And I think one of the guys that I'm going to pick who can bounce back would be Raheem Mostert. Now, Mostert finished pretty far outside of everywhere, finished 48th last year, dealt with a lot of injuries. But, by the way, I'll remind you guys, 1 year ago today, he went bananas, BANANAS, against the Green Bay Packers in the NFC Championship. Listen, I hate doing stuff like this, but I always do it. If you take his carries that he had over the first few games, all the games he played, the 8 games he played, he would have wound up with about 208 carries. That would have been the most carries by any Kyle Shanahan running back since Carlos Hyde in Shanahan's first year in San Francisco. So I think that they fully intended to use Raheem Mostert. Just didn't quite work out due to injury. Jeff Wilson is a restricted free agent, so we'll see if he sticks around. But as long as Mostert remains healthy, which is going to be another question mark we're going to put on a lot of these 49ers this offseason, I think Raheem Mostert's the guy who can definitely jump back into the fray there in that top 12.
It's interesting. I was looking over Mostert's numbers, and up until he got hurt in that Jets game, I want to say after he ran back or he had a 99-yard touchdown run, he was kind of hurt from that point on. He was dominating touches for the 49ers. It wasn't that instance where it was like a running back by committee in San Francisco. Like, they were committed to him early in the season.
I still look at the yards per attempt, which was still 5 yards per attempt, So that was off of 104 carries, 521 yards rushing. And then, I believe that big play you're talking about, I believe that might have been a pass play.
Okay.
Against the Jets.
Okay.
That was so he had 16 receptions. He had 156 yards. So in just right there alone, he was less than 30 yards shy of his total in 2019 as far as receiving yards. So I think he was in play for a big season, and then the injury bug crawled into his ear, and that was all she wrote.
Yeah, I know you're a 49ers fan, but you got to be proud of how that team hung in there despite all the injury, all the losses. I mean, this is not the first time that Shanahan has had to pull this team together. We go back a couple of years ago when Garoppolo, was out with the ACL, and this team still was able to rally.
Well, somebody tweeted this way back, and I don't remember who it was. It could have been anybody. So if it's you, don't kill me because I don't remember you. No offense, but somebody had tweeted that the Jimmy Garoppolo injury helped the Niners get Nick Bosa. Then they said the Nick Bosa injury will help get ... And now the Niners have the 12th overall pick. So not quite like the year when they got Bosa, but still, that's prime real estate picking 12. It's not too bad. So see what they end up with. And I'm encouraged. This leads me to believe that the window is still open for the Niners. They just got to be healthy. So
right. I'm going to go with J.K. Dobbins. He finished as the RB1 in total points scored. If you look over his last 4 games played, he was averaging 17.4 fantasy points per game. So let me put that in perspective for people. So in terms of RB1s, RBs 1 through 12 in total points scored, the average points per game for these running backs ranged between 22.4 and 12.5. So this guy was averaging 17.4. He was near the top of the leaderboard. No more Mark Ingram. Yes, the Gus bus is still there. But even with Gus Edwards still there, one of the things about J.K. Dobbins that was really impressive is that he had more attempts from within the 5-yard line, a.k.a. within in scoring position, than Gus Edwards. And he was very productive with those touches. I don't like to count playoff games as things to measure my stats off of because they're playoff games. I mean, sure. I get what you're saying. Like, it still counts, right? They still did something, right?
That's how Raheem Mostert got into the conversation headed into 2020. So all it's fair, man.
Fair enough, but they did feature Dobbins more than Gus Edwards this past week versus Buffalo. So I definitely think, and plus you have Lamar Jackson, and what do we always say? We say every running back who's paired with a mobile quarterback, that opens up running lanes, that makes things easier for J.K. Dobbins. And that happened to be the case, as Lamar Jackson got hot towards the end of the season, so did J.K. Dobbins. I don't think that's a coincidence. And I think you could definitely see him potentially jump inside the top 12 this year. Bauer, do you have anybody in mind?
I do. I actually want to touch real quick on what you guys said because I'm like that. Mike, the only thing that concerns me about Raheem Mostert is he's very cuttable if they chose to move on from him. But I think he's going to stick around just because he's cheap. Going back to something real quick, I love your J.K. Dobbins pick, Jorge, but that tells me pick up Justice Hill wherever you can in your dynasty leagues. The Ravens have always shown that they don't just stick with one running back. Mark Ingram's already been released, like you said.
They haven't stuck with one running back since the days of Ray Rice.
Exactly. Gus Edwards should be a starter next year somewhere. I believe he deserves it. And I think he's going to take like a mid-level deal. So Justice Hill should be floating around. If you remember that Pittsburgh game, he got some spot duty there. I was actually pulling the stats up. So 9 carries for 35 yards. Nothing great. He did have 2 catches for 5 yards. So again, nothing great, but 11 touches in the game when he hadn't really seen much action at all. But my guy is Kenyon Drake, and he could move on. He has that transition tag that was placed on him. But he could also stay. If you look at the Cardinals running back core, they have Chase Edmonds, who he's one of those guys, and Anthony and I actually talked about this, Mike. He's one of those guys like Alexander Madison. He seems to play better when he's not expected to be the guy, and then he shines. When it's his time, he's just a giant turd. Eno Benjamin was a 7th-round draft pick, but he was never activated, and is why it's important to pay attention to undrafted free agents. Jonathan Ward would be the next man up. He was an undrafted free agent. Thank you to Nate Christian for pointing him out to me, guy on the Dynasty Rewind. He was active over a guy like Eno Benjamin. So the ideal spot would be if Kenyon Drake stays in Arizona and is healthy. He did have that walking boot on prior to last season, but if he left and went somewhere like Atlanta, I think there's a very good possibility that that he could be a running back 1 again, like he was towards the end of his the first year there from Miami. Todd Gurley's done. Brian Hill's not the answer. Eno Smith is not the answer. They have another guy there. I don't know how to pronounce his name, so he's irrelevant.
Quadre Allison.
That's it. Yeah, Quadre, he's not going to do anything for me. So if Kenyon goes somewhere, I think he could smash. He's got a good skill set, and I have him in a bunch of spots. So hopefully he does go somewhere and do something. Please.
One of those mid-level running backs, by the way, really quick. Like you talk about Gus Edwards. We talked about Mark Ingram, Marlon Mack. One of those guys, just to me, and I mean, I spoke to Anthony about this. This is the 4th time Anthony's name has been dropped, this son of a gun. He ought to put some money into this damn show.
If he's watching, he should probably try and get on the show. If he's watching.
Really, Anthony, come on, man, answer your text. Jeez. But only because I was talking to him about this this morning. One of those 3 running backs just screams Buffalo Bills to me this offseason. Because I don't think the guys that they have in house are the answer. I think Zach Moss can be good. I don't think that he can be a guy that's the top guy.
He was the number 1 running back in the 2020 class, though. Remember when they said that?
Yeah, well, I also remember that PFF is not the gospel, and they're not always correct, and that's okay.
Thank
And
you.
that's okay. So,
Thank you.
but that's so. But no, but seriously though, to me, I don't think they have any running back in house there that can dominate carries. So to me, that's what screams that mid-level back that Bauer was talking about. If it's Gus Edwards or if it's a Marlon Mack or if it's someone to that effect, just come in there and gobble up some carries while Josh Allen continues to get all the rushing touchdowns.
I love Josh Allen, by the way.
Just to be a productive Jonathan Stewart during the Cam Newton days, or do you think there could be some actual touchdown upside with whoever running back goes there, whichever running back goes there?
No touchdown upside.
But the yardage could be the yardage will be there at least.
The yardage could be there. Yeah, absolutely.
That's a very good point.
But they're always going to vulture some here or there. I mean, didn't Zach Moss make that 2-touchdown game earlier this season?
No, I think that was like week 1. I think he did. Yeah.
No. It was later in the year. He had
he was hurt for a while too. So
he had like he might. I'm gonna pull this up while we talk, but I think he had 3 touchdowns in like 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. Zach Moss.
And Singletary is actually my favorite of the Buffalo running backs. He's my favorite one that's currently there. Yeah, because he gets the receiving work. But the problem I have is, and I'm a big narrative buster. If you've listened to me, you hear when someone gets drafted somewhere, you hear analysts go, okay, well, this guy does this, and now this guy is the receiving back. These guys have never been on the field together. You don't know that. So, and also if you're planning on being a fantasy analyst, don't say things with such conviction until try to say things like I believe or I feel, because when you say this happens, what you have is people come after you because they remember that stuff. And they're going to hold you accountable on Twitter and on social media public forums. So especially on Twitter. It's all about presentation. But I love me Devin Singletary.
Just to go back though, I did fact check that, and Zach Moss in weeks 8 and weeks 9, week 8 2 touchdowns, week 9 1 touchdown. So getting into the second half of the season, he did have those touchdowns. He did have a touchdown in week 1 though, Jorge. You were right. He did have he had a receiving touchdown.
Right. Okay.
So there you go.
Just sidetracking just a little bit. Bauer, what you just said as far as fantasy analysts or people who want to become fantasy analysts, know what you're getting your information from and why you're getting it from them. Don't just like Mike said, don't just treat one source as gospel, because there's pros and cons with everything. All right, so let me throw out a name here. I was going to say Austin Ekeler, but unless I'm not reading the room correctly, he has potential due to the receptions there in Los Angeles. I know they have a new head coach. I know we don't know who the offensive coordinator is. These are big things. I'm not trying to downplay that, but he's still a talented guy, and you would think that they would utilize Ekeler as he has been utilized in the past. Does he have running back 12, RB1 upside there? You don't think so, Bauer?
No.
Why?
I'm not an Austin Ekeler guy, and I never have been, and I've taken heat for that. It's not that I don't like Austin Ekeler. I just don't think he is what they want or need him to be. I think Joshua Kelly, I think he showed enough that he could be a piece there, and he did. He hit a rookie wall. Rookies are gonna do that. They also have Justin Jackson there. Kalen Ballage was a thing for a while too. 2020 was a weird year, but I don't see it with Austin Ekeler, and I could be wrong. And you know what? Hold the receipt on if I'm wrong. Today's January 19th. It's 8:24 p.m. and I hope I am wrong. But I'm not an Austin Ekeler guy. And I let people overpay for him all the time.
Going back to Jeremy Noble's comment, we will get to Antonio Gibson, I promise you, as the show goes on. We were on the same page. See, I'm okay. Well, we're on the same page. We'll get to that in a little bit. Maddie Big Chest is joining us from the Dynasty Rewind. How you doing, Maddie? Okay, so Mike, what are your thoughts on Austin Ekeler?
I think Austin Ekeler can creep back up into the top 12, but I kind of am going to go a little bit with what Bauer is saying here, where I think that here's the deal that folks need to remember. Remember I talked about not being married to certain things, right? So if we're telling you now on this show, like I'm saying, I like Raheem Mostert, or, I like this guy, I like that guy. keep in mind when we tell you these things and you get this in your head and you fall asleep at night and you have visions of Raheem Mostert scoring 3 touchdowns, and just remember, it's all also about draft price on draft day. Very far away, but definitely something to keep in mind. So if we tell you that we like Austin Ekeler, don't run through a wall to draft him if it's someone's going to overpay for him. Like Bauer said, let that person overpay. If it's the right price, I like Austin Ekeler. I think that the conversation I think is interesting about Austin Ekeler, and I think Austin Ekeler kind of comes out on the better side of this, but we're going to have a real come to Jesus talk or come to whomever talk, whomever we believe in. Because it's 2021, I got to make sure I say that.
A lot of options on the table. Yep.
Whatever. I think we really need to talk about assessing certain price tags, like the Joe Mixons of the world, and Austin Ekeler. Do people really buy into Austin Ekeler? And James Conner, what is he? I think there's a lot of conversations that are going to have to happen this summer about running backs that we used to wholeheartedly believe in.
Absolutely.
Whatever. But I do think Ekeler can finish, and I do think he can finish in the top 12 because I think that there is still the upside there for receptions.
A good one for you guys then.
Give it to me.
All right, well, go for it.
You're gonna like this. So Austin Ekeler was being drafted first round, second round,
late first, early second, depending. Yeah.
Well, he finished as I understand that he was hurt, but he finished as running back 29 on the season, whereas Jeff Wilson Jr. finished as running back 30 on the
but in total, well, he wasn't playing for a few games, Mike Bauer.
Well, Jeff Wilson,
no wonder he finished so far down the list.
Jeff Wilson didn't play every game either.
Jeff Wilson didn't play every game either, and that's going to be interesting. Jeff Wilson, by the way, because I mentioned he's a restricted free agent, so somebody's going to give him an offer. The Niners are going to have an opportunity to match it. It's going to be interesting to see if anybody doesn't match it.
Well, what this shows is play the waiver wire. You get gems like that. So
that's a good point. So I'm gonna talk about running back really quick. That Mike, you I believe had a tweet about a couple weeks ago, and then he took on the Green Bay Packers and kind of went off against Green Bay.
Yeah, I'll say something about what I was going to say about that tweet. But yeah, it's catching a lot of heat for that, justifiably so.
I just want to know: is your opinion changed on Cam Akers?
Here's my deal, okay? And what happened was when I tweeted, I mistweeted, but I don't like to say that I didn't mean to do, because you put a tweet out there, you got to stand by it. So I stood by it. So I went in front of the firing squad. What I was trying to say was I thought that people were going to overvalue him next year, not next week. So I got killed for that, justifiably so. Akers had a good game. And guys, to those who were criticizing me, joke's on you, because guess what? I had Cam Akers in DraftKings, and I won some money. So whatever. So we're all happy.
There you go.
I'm just wondering if Cam Akers is going to be the type of guy. I understand he's got a ton of potential. I view Cam Akers kind of like I viewed Miles Sanders going into this past season. A lot of people are going to be really high on him. This guy's going to be great. This is the year. He had competition. He showed that now he does not need this competition. He has broken away from this competition. And I'm just wondering where his ADP goes. Because if his ADP goes too high, then he could disappoint. That's all I'm saying. Because Sean McVay did say at the start of last season he wanted to go with multiple running backs. Who's to say he still doesn't want to stick with that? I know everybody on Twitter wants to just assume that Sean McVay went to bed and said he went to bed with his beautiful supermodel fiance or wife or whoever she is. She's a wonderful girl, I'm sure. But Sean McVay went to bed and said, you know what? Those multiple running backs ideas done. Cam Akers is my guy forever. He's the next Todd Gurley. He's going to get 250 to 300 touches a year. Not a problem. It's not always that easy. I know we like to wish it into fruition.
Right.
But it doesn't happen. But that's really what I meant by that tweet. But I mistweeted because
that's a very good point. And catch me if I'm wrong here, but you were making a reference to how it could be kind of like the Shanahan system in San Francisco, where it's a committee approach. You just don't know what to expect. I completely understand that. Completely get that. I also get the narrative that people could be saying, "Hey, McVay is a one running back guy when he has his guy, a la Todd Gurley. One thing I will say about Sean McVay is what he puts out there in the press, you can kind of believe it, as opposed to other coaches. Well, look, you said it yourself. He said he was looking for a committee approach this year, and then that happened to be the case.
He also said nothing was wrong with Todd Gurley's knee.
That's a good point.
I'm just saying. You're right, but I'm right. So
we're cheers. We're both right. There we go. Okay, we got a question here real quick from Matty Big Chest. Opinions on AJ Dillon long term. Are we buying him just to sell him once Jones leaves, or do we hold him if Jones leaves? I'll let Bauer take this one. What do you think?
Bauer question right there.
There's a little bit of a behind the scenes dig here at the Dynasty Rewind crew. We have Bob Van Duzer as our IDP guy, and he's a Packers fan, and so he likes AJ Dillon because he's a Packer. You know, I don't think he's the biggest fan of him otherwise. So we're always digging at each other about AJ Dillon, but I usually just say he sucks. I didn't see it. I understand, you know, the size, the speed, and the analytical production, but the dude looks like his feet are stuck in concrete. He doesn't catch the ball. He doesn't really have good vision. He doesn't have good burst. He doesn't have good breakaway speed. Oof. That being said, also, one of the things I look for when scouting a running back, Jorge, in case you're wondering, is
listening. Yep.
With his feet after first contact. Do the feet keep moving? His usually do not. All that being said, he does have one thing that makes AJ Dillon important, and that is draft capital. So if Aaron Jones leaves, you need to pay attention. And Mike, going back to this, if somebody wants to overpay you for AJ Dillon, you let them do so, and you get a guy that you were in love with. That's what I do. I let people overpay. Now, if nobody wants to overpay or nobody wants to give you a good deal, you take him. And if you have a starting running back, you have a starting running back. Same thing with a guy like James Robinson. What's the worst thing that happens with James Robinson? He falls out of the top 12. And what'd you pay for James Robinson? Did anybody really draft him? That's not a Devy league.
Right.
Yeah, I think he's more of like the week one waiver wire ad and waiver wire ad of the year, to be honest with you.
Most likely AJ Dillon didn't have the best draft capital because so many people were really spotty on him. So if he doesn't do anything, you probably didn't waste too big of a pick. But my opinion on AJ Dillon long-term is thumbs down. I'm going to pass. If I have him on a roster somewhere, I will try to move him. If I can't move him for what I want off season, let him smash for a few games in season. Because, you know, running backs, they always have an opportunity to have a good game. So
that's a good point. Let me throw out one more running back that finished outside the top 12 that has the potential to get into RB1 discussion. And I don't really care who the quarterback is, to be honest. And this may be a controversial take right here. So what was that?
Saquon Barkley.
I actually, okay. Well, to segue off that slightly, and we'll get into this as the year goes on, I'm not the biggest Saquon Barkley fan, but I'll just save that for later on during the season.
Grew up 10 minutes away from my house, Jorge. He's a national treasure here.
Yeah, that's because you're a Penn Stater. Okay, that's why. You're a Penn State fan and you love Saquon Barkley. No, I'm talking about Myles Gaskin. He finished as an RB27 in total points, last 4 games played, averaging 18 fantasy points per game. I mean, James Robinson, sure, he was the RB1 waiver wire darling of the year, but I feel like Gaskins was like the flex player value of the year on the waiver wire also. Mike, what are your thoughts there with Myles Gaskin?
I don't mind Myles Gaskin, but I think that the Miami Dolphins are going to be busy this offseason with the offensive side of the ball, and I don't think that they're going to be afraid to bring in a running back to sort of shake that up for Myles Gaskin on that depth chart. If we, and again, we're doing this early, but if we just say hypothetically, if the Dolphins don't go ahead and add any kind of serious pieces, then I do agree with your take that he could venture towards the top 12, sure. But I just, you know, we talked about teams using multiple running backs. That is kind of the way of the world nowadays. So I would not be shocked to mention a lot of these mid-level backs that we talked about earlier. Would not shock me if one of those doesn't wind up in Buffalo, if they wind up in Miami, just enough to break it up for a guy like Gaskins to hit the top 12. Right, but I do like it going forward. I do.
All right, well, let's switch to wide receivers. Let's talk about wide receiver that you do like. Sorry, Bauer. Yep.
real quick, I just want to say Savon Ahmed is in Miami. Great. We loved Savon Ahmed. He was a 49er for a little bit. Also, I would love if they drafted Michael Carter at a UNC. I think he'd be a great fit for that team. They definitely have the draft capital to do it. So, sorry.
This is a great question from Jeremy Noble. CEH has to be better next year, right? Well, I guess it starts off with CEH has to be healthy next year, right? Because that's kind of what's been keeping him off the field. Wouldn't you say, guys?
Well, yeah, and if I could just actually, it's funny that comment came up because I'm looking as per fantasy data, half-point scoring, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire finished as the 22nd best running back. There's a guy right behind him that I want to mention, that I will mention, but I will just say Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he could finish in the top 12. I don't think he will. I think he'll be close, but I wouldn't give him that nod. The guy I do want to mention is Miles Sanders of the Philadelphia Eagles. Bauer, I talked to you off air. I gave you what are we at, 36 minutes? I gave you about a half hour to mention his name. You didn't mention his name. I'm going to jump in there really quick. I was down on Miles Sanders going into this past year, which I already spoke about. I thought Josh Jacobs would be better. Lo and behold, he was. Guys who want to rip me, where are you now? Anyway,
you let him know, Mike. You let him know.
That being said, I think that a lot of it was what I had said during the offseason. I think a lot of it's not about Miles Sanders, the athlete. It's about getting the opportunity. And I think Doug Peterson really stunted his growth in this sophomore season. And I think whoever this next coach is, whoever comes in here, I think that this is going to bode well for Miles Sanders. And I think we see Miles, listen, again, finish 23rd. And to me, vastly underused in my opinion, especially for what people anticipated. I think given the opportunity, he's going to have no problem finishing in that top 12, in my opinion. So
I think if memory serves, one of the concerns I think you and Anthony were debating last year was the involvement of Boston Scott in the passing game and Miles Sanders becoming an issue there. And Sanders, when he was there, he was pretty spot on, you know?
Anthony's concerned with Boston Scott. That's very much true. And he would appreciate you name dropping Boston Scott on the show. But yeah, that was his concern. And my concern was just simply them not using Miles Sanders like they should. That was my concern. I didn't know that it would be as drastic as it was.
Right.
And I mean, Bauer, you're the Eagles guy. I mean, we're talking about the Eagles. You're sitting here squirming probably, but we did have that kind of belief. But with that being said, I'm going to let Bauer talk. I'm going to go get another drink.
All righty.
I'll make it quick. The whole offense was just a disaster, you know. And once Jalen Hurts came in, Doug Peterson said, "Well, we're going to do things to make him comfortable, like run the ball and play good defense, and make better play calls." It's like, well, why wouldn't you do that with your struggling quarterback beforehand? You know what I mean? So he did come into the season hurt too. Don't forget, he only played in, where is it? 12 games, 13 games, 12 games. He only played in 12 games. So he played one less game than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Running wise, he's actually more efficient than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Better yards per carry. Not as good through the air this year. He did stonehand a lot of passes this year, and I watch every game, so I saw them all.
Right.
It was bad, but whoever the coach is, it's going to be a big uptick for Miles Sanders. And the problem I have with them trying to run a running back by committee is they didn't have the running backs to do it. You only have one good running back. It didn't make any sense to me.
It's funny. I said earlier about my not a big Saquon Barkley fan, and I guess I'll disagree with you guys for the Miles Sanders take. And the reason is they both have the same flaw on their team. They have atrocious offensive lines. And it's one of those things where I understand talent can sometimes overcome a lot of deficiencies. But more often than not, somebody will tell me, well, Saquon Barkley's acceleration speed is out of this world. Holy moly, Batman. And I'll say, yeah, and he's accelerating right into the back of his offensive lineman because that offensive lineman can't open up a running lane to save his life. The same is definitely said about the Philadelphia Eagles. So whoever this head coach is who comes in here, if they don't address the offensive line, I don't know how optimistic you can really be from what we've seen already.
It's going to get better.
fair.
Lane Johnson will be back. Brandon Brooks will be back. I think Jason Kelce retires. What I'd like to see happen then is Isaac Seumalo moves to center. I would like to see Andre Dillard move from left tackle to left guard and keep Mailata at left tackle. And then the offensive line will be much better than Nate Herbig and Jamon Brown. The guy that, might I add, was adjusting his glove while his quarterback was getting sacked. An offensive guard. Do you guys remember that?
No, I don't remember.
Oh, yeah, you got to look it up. Jamon, I'll find it on YouTube. I'll send you guys a link then. It's fantastic. Wentz has like 3 guys around him ready to hit him, and he's standing there fixing his glove.
I did not see that. That's news to me.
I did.
Shout out to my boys over at Eagle Rare, by the way, as I continue my unofficial sponsor.
There you go. Love it. Eagle Rare, unofficial sponsor right now.
Eagle Rare.
Before we switch over to wide receivers, just to remind everybody to head over to Monkey Knife Fight and use the promo code FRAMES, all in caps. When you sign up, you get up to $50 free with your first deposit. Who doesn't like free money? I know I do. So head over to Monkey Knife Fight. I played their games last week, their prop games last week. It's pretty awesome. Like, you can decide, will a certain player score more yard or have more yards or fewer yards? And they even do it by fantasy points. Will this player score this many fantasy points or under this many fantasy points? So however you want to look at it, especially for all the fantasy football viewers out there and listeners, try it out. It's a lot of fun, and it's free money up to $50. So head over to Monkey Knife Fight, use the promo code FRAMES, and let's talk about some wide receivers that finished outside the top 12 that have the potential to finish as wide receiver ones. Mike, I know Anthony would also appreciate this next wide receiver that I'm going to be discussing, because he's a year removed from being in the top 12. He's a ankle fracture away from potentially being right there in the discussion again from the top 12, and that is Amari Cooper. Wide receiver 16, despite Dak Prescott being gone for the majority of the year, was wide receiver 16 in total points. The issue, of course, is the quarterback play. In his last 4 games played, he only got you 8.9 half PPR fantasy points. But throughout the majority of the season, he got double-digit points up until the last 4 games played. My question to you, Mike, is this going to still be Amari Cooper's receiving core? I know he signed this 5-year, $100 million contract last season, but CeeDee Lamb started to come on strong. They drafted CeeDee Lamb high. Michael Gallup's still there. Does Amari Cooper have a chance to sneak back in? And let me preface this by saying Dak Prescott, he comes back healthy 100%.
Yeah, of course. And that's the preface that I think we need to go on here. And I think it's a fair preface to go on. Listen, I do not think so. But I only do not think so because I think CeeDee Lamb, if we look at what CeeDee Lamb was doing prior to that Dak Prescott injury, I think CeeDee Lamb is ultimately going to overtake Amari Cooper as the number 1 wide receiver in Dallas. And I want to make it clear, to me, that's not a swipe at Amari Cooper. To me, that is just the magnitude of just how good CeeDee Lamb is. Right. That in year 2, we could talk about him being better than CeeDee Lamb. Listen, if anybody says Amari Cooper is going to be better than CeeDee, you're not going to get a huge fight out of me on it. But if you're asking me, right, I think that CeeDee Lamb will be the best Cowboys wide receiver, and therefore I think one of them will finish in the top 12. I think 2 or 3 of them can finish in the top 24. So I don't think Amari Cooper will be very far off. And by the way, Anthony, we've name dropped Anthony so many times. And I texted him. I said, you should come in this live chat and say something. But he did get some dental work done today, though. So he's a little jammed up. So he is hanging out. So we'll see if he shows up. But Anthony made a prediction during the offseason, obviously during last offseason leading into 2020, that he thought that all 3 wide receivers, so Michael Gallup included, could have 1,000 yards receiving each. Dak Prescott didn't even play the whole year, as we all well know, but they still finished pretty close. So that's why I think you can get 2 or 3 of these guys in the top 24. But I do think CD is the number 1 guy.
And I remember that, and I completely agreed with it. Look, if there's one thing Mike McCarthy does for fantasy managers is he produces a good triplet of wide receivers to choose from. You can get them at all sorts of value levels in your fantasy football drafts. All right, that's a good take. Who's somebody that you do like that you think could jump into the top 12?
I'm going to mention this guy, and I know we're trying to stick with guys that weren't too way far out of the top whatever,
No,
top
whoever you
24,
want, really.
whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm only bringing him up because this is the controversial name. It's brought up every single offseason, so I'm doing it. I'm going to be the first guy who brings it up. Odell Beckham.
Okay.
Odell Beckham. Mike's shaking his head. I know. And this is and I get it. This is a take that you cannot, if anybody shakes their head and criticizes, you literally cannot bash them for disagreeing. This really, if people don't agree with Odell Beckham, it literally is well, we ultimately agree to disagree because the detractors have so much ammunition to shoot down Odell Beckham, and all of it is extremely fair. I'm just looking at what he was able to do in those 7 games that he did play. 75.32 fantasy points. I get it. It's very easy to say this, but I'm saying it, so get over it. If you use those points over 16 games, he's one of the better wide receivers in fantasy. Then you're accounting for another year in a Kevin Stefanski offense for all of these players. Listen, the running backs are still the heart and soul of this team. As long as the running backs are going, this team is going to win. That's why they lost the AFC Championship, in my opinion. They didn't use those running backs enough, even though Chubb had a very tough day catching the ball. But I think Odell Beckham is a guy who I know we say it every year. And we're going to say it every year till he's gone. But
Right. Right, exactly.
I think Odell Beckham is the guy that if he stays with Cleveland, I think he can creep towards that top 12, back end top 12. We're not talking about top 5. Let's not get crazy, but just
let me ask you, if let's say they get rid of Odell Beckham this year and he goes someplace else, do you think the talent is there for him to be still a top 12 receiver wherever he lands? I know there's a lot of factors that can go into play.
That's what I'm saying. Talent will always be there with Odell Beckham, but it's all about landing. It's all about where he lands. Like for example, I think that Antonio Brown, if he stays with Tampa, he finished 66th. I think he could be potentially a wide receiver too, maybe. But I don't think he's going to be a wide receiver 1 because of the competition in which he plays with there. So, I think that does limit talent. So
that's a good point. So Bauer, who do you got that you think could creep into the top 12?
Also, just to touch on OBJ, the only reason I don't see him being a wide receiver 1 again is just because of being in Cleveland. I am not that sold on Baker Mayfield.
Boo.
Here comes Brown's Twitter, but that's fine. Now, if he was somewhere like Detroit, absolutely. Stafford could sling it. So a guy that I have that I like that could move back up, it's kind of an easy one. I really want to say Brandon Ayuk, but I thought Mike might want to talk about him. But I'm going to go with DJ Moore.
Okay.
I think another year in that system. I do believe Curtis Samuel is a free agent, possibly. So one less guy in the wide receiver room. It's going to open things up for DJ Moore. He was kind of just up and down all year this season, and he was one of those guys where, oddly enough, we were asking ourselves, do we start him this week? And the previous year, you plug him in, you play him, and you're fine. Of course, when I get him on my team, he's not fine. But another year, maybe they draft a quarterback, a developmental guy, like a Zach Wilson or something like that, because that's not a pressing need for them right now. But, his value's a little depressed. I'm trying to scoop him up in Dynasty anywhere that I can. But he's still a hard guy to acquire. But I think he could sneak back up. But if you look at this list, I mean, one thing you have to consider is, okay, we want guys to come back up. Who are we taking out? Devontae Adams, just some of these guys, they're not leaving. Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, Calvin Ridley, I could see falling out if Julio Jones gets back to form. DeAndre Hopkins, he's not going anywhere. Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf, maybe Adam Thielen, maybe Tyler Lockett.
You just said 2 right there that I think immediately in my mind have the most potential to drop out of the top 12. Those 2 receivers right there.
AJ Brown's not going anywhere. Allen Robinson, if he goes to a different team, with a better quarterback, we can make a case for Allen Robinson being a top 5 wide receiver. So, we're talking about these guys, and while it's easy to say they have that capability, they're going to have to bump somebody out. And then you look at 13, Robert Woods, 14, Keenan Allen, 15, Brandon Cooks, no. Amari Cooper, Marvin Jones Jr., Juju, Chase Claypool is a guy that we could talk about possibly getting in there too. So, we want to take these guys and put them in, but who's really going to drop out?
If Allen Robinson, by the way, and Bauer, you're making a great point. Like, who's going to drop out? And it is a tough situation to, kind of make that call. But, man, if Allen Robinson ends up with a good quarterback, he is the Stephon Diggs in 2021. I mean, why not?
He's only 64% of the targets. I can't remember exactly what it is, but I think only 64% of the targets he's received in the NFL have been catchable. And look at the production that he's had. So if he went somewhere with, like, we don't even need to say a good quarterback, a competent NFL quarterback, he's going to smash. It's going to be insane.
Let me ask you, Keenan Allen. Okay. He has the reception competition with Austin Ekeler, assuming that offensive scheme stays somewhat similar to what it has been in the past. Does he creep back up in the top 12, do you think? Does he bump Tyler Lockett, who, by the way, Tyler Lockett, weeks 8 through 17, excuse me, in the last 6 games played, he had 6 games with double-digit targets, double-digit fantasy points. And all right, let me start over again. In 11 games, he's had 11 games with single-digit fantasy points. He's only had 6 games with double-digit fantasy points to end the season. He's very boom or bust. When he booms big. That's why you're seeing him up the total point scale. But we look at what's going on with Seattle. They fired their offensive coordinator. All the rumors are that Seattle wants to be more run-heavy. I'm just going to ignore the rumor about Adam Gase potentially being the new offensive coordinator because that's a whole other can of worms we don't need to get into.
Don't do it. Don't do it, Seattle.
Do it, Seattle. Do it, you idiots.
But all this is telling me that they're going to be more conservative in the passing game, and we have already DK Metcalf there is established as the wide receiver 1, I believe, in that offense. So that means a decrease in production has to come somewhere, and I think it comes from Tyler Lockett. Does Keenan Allen bump up into that top 12 then?
Their numbers aren't that far apart.
Yeah.
The amount of catches. Tyler Lockett only had 62 more yards receiving than Keenan Allen. He played 2 more games. The touchdowns, he's 2 more touchdowns. So really, it was close. You got to think. What's up, Doug? You got to think if Keenan Allen played the full 16 games, he would have been a wide receiver 1. That would have been pretty easy. I mean, he's sitting at 14.
Yeah.
So I think it would have been.
Yeah, I think that's a tough one to really really shoot holes in. I would sign up for that.
All right, so since wide receiver is kind of hard to predict, let's go into people who are in the RB1s and wide receiver 1s that have the potential to fall down. Let's start with running backs. Look, I'm a Washington fan. I was very proud of the fact that, Washington won the division. I know that sounds weird because it's Washington, it's the NFC East. But you know what? What they overcame with Alex Smith coming back, with their coach being in chemo all year long, with all the drama in the offseason, the name stuff, everything, the owner stuff, like you name it. This team had no business being in a position to take the NFC East division. It really makes me mad that the Eagles, did what they did in week 17, or else I could say more confidently, yeah, Washington saw what was in front of them and took it from the Eagles. But you know what? They won. I'm not going to apologize for them winning. They won. Somebody had to win, and they took it.
So many people mad. And as an Eagles fan, that's all we want to do is to piss all the other 31 teams off in the NFL. By the way, that's why I was against flexing that game to 8 o'clock. If that would have happened at 1 o'clock, nobody would have cared.
Nobody would have cared. Fair assessment.
I see where I'm going with this is I see Antonio Gibson dropping outside of the top 12. You don't know what the quarterback play is going to be. You don't know if they're going to be drafting a quarterback. Bauer, You said Matt Stafford in Detroit earlier. I wouldn't be shocked if they pull something, because I believe Stafford is a free agent this year. I wouldn't be surprised if Washington makes a call there and sticks to improving their defense on the back end.
I think
which is what I think.
Veteran, though. I don't think they draft a guy. I don't think Ron Rivera at his age wants to draft a guy and develop a quarterback. I think they're going to find a veteran. And I hope it's a guy like Stafford. I hope they don't gamble on a guy like Mitchell Trubisky. And I understand that their GM is the guy that drafted Cam Newton too, so he's going to be linked to Washington all offseason. I love Cam, but he's done. He's done with him too. You never know; they could pull off a trade too. Do they trade for Deshaun Watson, Jorge?
Okay. I think there's two questions to ask. Do I want them to trade for Deshaun Watson? Absolutely. Okay. Would name my firstborn Deshaun if they did that. Okay. Will they do that? I don't think they will.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
Let's hope, though, right? I mean, I don't hope so. I don't want that.
Well, I bet you don't. Yeah, because you're an Eagles fan. That makes sense.
But it would make the division games awesome, though. I could tell you that.
I do agree with what you're saying, though, that depending on what they bring in, because this is a Washington team. Yeah, they made the playoffs, this and that, yes, but they still have a lot of work to do on offense, but they look pretty good on defense. So I get what you're saying, and Stafford's still under contract for another 2 more years, another 3 more years, so they are going to have to pick up the phone and try and trade for Stafford. And I think that if they can, then God bless them, go for it. I think that would be a hell of a move. I think Stafford is a guy who's been plagued by being at the wrong place at the wrong time for a long time. So I do like that. I'm upset with you that you mentioned Antonio Gibson falling out of the top 12, but I get it.
Going back to what Todd Barnes asked earlier.
Hey, Porkman. What's up, Porkman? I see you saying hello.
We love Porkman. He's a great guy. He was asking about J.D. McKissick and whether or not McKissick is gone. Does he come back? I thought McKissick played well in the receiving game. He was basically their wide receiver too, for all intents and purposes. You had Terry McLaurin as the one. Okay, you can make Logan Thomas as the next best receiving option. But McKissick, when they're trailing, which was often, he was kind of their go-to release valve. I could see them bringing him back and improving and adding some competition in that backfield.
I think he's under contract 1 more year, if I'm not mistaken here. McKissick, according to Spotrac, at least he is.
So that's even more of a reason. Obviously, he's under contract, but that's my concern. There is that if they don't improve the offense as a whole, if they don't get a good quarterback in there to really take the pressure off the running game, I just don't see Antonio Gibson over the long haul, over the 16-game season, being the guy to be in the top 12.
You know what, Jorge? The free agent wide receiver class is bad. It's bad. I mean, Brett Hundley, Matt Schaub, RG3, Matt Barkley, Trubisky, Brandon Allen, Andy Dalton, Dak Prescott, but Dak's not going to go there. I don't think so. Just looking around here, notable names: Blake Bortles, Jacoby Brissett, if you want a game manager, Phillip Rivers might retire. No. Fitzpatrick, why not? He could still sling it, right?
Fitzpatrick's the one guy that okay. But
here we go. This is the one that if he's a restricted free agent, but if I was Washington, I'd make a run and call me crazy at Josh Rosen.
You're crazy.
Okay, but he's got a good wide receiver and Terry McLaurin there. They've got Antonio Gandy Golden, Calvin Harmon, strong line, strong defense, good running game, good coaching staff.
I think if you bring in one, I don't think it happens, but two, I don't think it's crazy. But I will say that if they do go that route, they need to go ahead and bring in a guy like Fitzpatrick, or maybe bring in a veteran and let Rosen just learn for, I think Porkman thinks that's crazy. It is crazy, Porkman, but this is a crazy world we're living in, as you well know. So, but maybe Rosen is a guy that, maybe he's one of the guys who stays on the bench for the longest of all the NFL quarterbacks ever and turns out to benefit from it. Who knows? It could be. But I would just say that no team should bring in Rosen and say, no GM can sell to their owner, I'm bringing in Josh Rosen. That's our starting quarterback. You can't. You have to bring. Yes, yeah. You have to say I'm bringing in Rosen, but I got Fitzpatrick on the back end, or I'm trading for Matt Ryan. I'm trading for Matthew Stafford. That has to be there.
All right, so we can't leave this podcast today just with Josh Rosen as the last football thing we talk about. So let's keep it in Washington. Did Tyler Heineke earn a backup quarterback job?
Yes.
Sure.
And he got it taken away because people found out he supported Trump. So he might not ever play in the NFL again.
Well, that was surely. Did you see the T-shirts they have of him? They have him on Fanatics. You know, you can. Nice, Mike. Were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to say thank you for the memories, I guess. Taylor, yeah, very nice of you.
Yeah, exactly. The touchdown. If you go on Fanatics and you go to Washington, you can find his hoodie and his T-shirt, and it's the picture of him reaching over to score that touchdown. He is immortalized in T-shirt heaven. Thank you for the memories, as you just said.
Did you buy one?
I do have a little more time if you guys have a little more time, because I wanted to mention a running back. I mean, the rule is at the Hauff household, podcasting needs to be done by around 9:30. You know, because people got to go to bed. Them's the rules, and I follow the rules.
All right.
Usually. A running back who I think could fall out of the top 12. I think I'm going to go with James Robinson.
Okay.
Of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I think that it's because of what a lot of people can lead to. And again, this is a kid with a hell of a lot of talent. We saw it. He had over 1,000 rushing yards, 245 carries, 7 rushing touchdowns, 3 through the air. Not too shabby, but you're bringing in a major overhaul, and you're also bringing in Trevor Lawrence. And Trevor Lawrence, to me, this isn't the type of quarterback that you draft and you go, well, he'll throw it a little bit here and there to start it out, and we'll see how it goes. This is a quarterback who's going to come in slinging. This is a quarterback who's going to have to give Urban Meyer a reason to say, let's scale it back. Let's scale back the play calling. So, to me, I think that a product of that could be James Robinson falling outside that top 12. I'm not saying he's obliterated. I'm not saying he's going to fall completely off the face of the earth, but outside top 12, absolutely.
So let me throw a name out there and get your opinion. David Montgomery finishes the RB4 in total points scored.
Crazy.
Tariq Cohen coming back from the ACL. Does he stay in the top 12?
Good for Brad Evans, by the way, who's been standing in that David Montgomery fire for years now. I listen. Are we going to see top 5 out of Dave Montgomery? No, I don't think so. But I think Dave Montgomery can still. I think he can still hang in that top 12, and I think he could still hang in that top 12 with Tariq Cohen because I think he proved something to Matt Nagy. That's the biggest thing for me. So I think he could still stay inside that top 12. Top 5, no dice.
I got one for you guys. Kareem Hunt.
Mm-hmm.
I know everyone loves talent, but Nick Chubb missed time. Kareem Hunt. When Nick Chubb finished as running back 9, Kareem Hunt was running back 10.
Yeah. No.
He actually had more carries for less yards than Nick Chubb, where he made his money. Let's see.
In the receiving game?
Yeah, over double the receptions that Nick Chubb had. But Nick Chubb, he could do it. Nick Chubb actually had a better yards per reception than Kareem Hunt did. Not much, 1.4 yards per reception better, but still better is better. Full season there of Nick Chubb, and I think Kareem Hunt topples out. And then look at the 2 guys underneath them. Ezekiel Elliott was at 11, and Antonio Gibson was at 12. And I know, Jorge, you said you think he falls out, but we could also see, maybe he doesn't. Those 2 guys slide right up in there. And I do agree what you say, Mike, about James Robinson. I don't think they draft a running back, to be honest with you. Because why? They have a lot of other issues, and James Robinson is practically free. So ride him for a little bit.
I mean, do we see 240 carries again from James Robinson next year?
I don't think.
Like if I had to tell you, if I had to tell you under 239.5 carries for 2021, you taking the over or you taking the under?
I'm taking the under.
Under. Yeah, I'm with you. Well, when he's all your offense, of course they're going to have to feature him more. than they would normally, and that he's not the offense anymore. He's Trevor Lawrence is going to be the offense. DJ Chark could be a person that we could be talking about, next year again, as we were a couple seasons ago. I'm not saying top 12, but he could be in that, just outside the top 12 potentially.
Or complimentary piece to which Robinson falls out of the top 12. Yeah, absolutely.
Question: do you think because Urban Meyer is now the coach of the Jaguars, do they go crazy and take Justin Fields at 1?
I'm not going with that lot, and I get it. I get the reasoning. I get the I get the reason for speculation, but no, I don't. I don't. I think they go Trevor Lawrence. I do, and I also, by the way, I'll just say, as we were going live, it sounds to me, Porkman's mouthing off a lot. Yeah, Porkman, come on, Porkman.
He does. I deal with this
Porkman.
No, I'm kidding. I love Porkman, but I saw before we went on the air here that apparently Trent Baalke, former 49ers GM, is in line for the Jaguars GM job. Ay, coño. I do not like that.
No.
No. Listen, I dealt with Trent Baalke in San Francisco.
All right, he was before Lynch came there.
Yeah. Not a fan. He was for a long time.
Dark times. Right.
Did I say I'm not a fan? I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that you're not a fan, but in case you didn't hear that, could you mention it one more time?
Not a fan.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make that clear.
Pork is saying he's already hired, so
he is already hired. Okay, there we go.
I don't like that for them.
Look, I'm with you, Bauer, going to Kareem Hunt. Weeks 8 through 17, 3 double-digit games, 6 single-digit games. You saw him in the beginning of the season with Nick Chubb. He was putting up double-digit games left and right. Nick Chubb goes down during the Dallas game, and then you see Kareem Hunt. I think he has like one game after that where it's kind of impressive, and then a whole lot of nothing until later on in the season. And then Nick Chubb came back, and you still didn't see a lot of the, side-by-side consistent production for both of these running backs to end the season. I could see that. That could definitely be somebody I could see. We already talked about Miles Sanders, Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Talk about
you mentioned. I'm sorry, Mike. You mentioned James Conner and how we were perceiving James Conner come the summertime. I'm having a hard time perceiving him as anything, to be honest with you. I feel towards James Conner the same way I feel towards Todd Gurley, as in not going to do it.
Yeah,
hard
pass.
Like, do you think Todd Gurley stays as the running back in Atlanta?
No. Okay. How could you? Not you, right. But how could you?
How dare you make that assumption?
But how could Atlanta really? Atlanta needs a extreme home makeover at the running back position. They really do, and now they have Arthur Smith there, so maybe they go ahead and do that. A new GM there too. I apologize, his name slipped my mind. I know he was just hired yesterday, I believe, or a day or two ago. Yeah, no, I don't think Todd Gurley is the answer. And to me, the James Conner thing, comparing him to Todd Gurley, kind of jaw-dropping at first, kind of opens some eyes, perks the eyebrows. But really, what are we talking about here?
Right? Not really productive.
If Pittsburgh wouldn't pay Le'Veon Bell, and I know Le'Veon Bell now is a complete shamble, but if they wouldn't pay Le'Veon Bell at that time for what Le'Veon Bell was at that time, you think they're going to pay James Conner? Not going to happen. If anything else, they bring in another guy with James Conner as a complimentary piece. Sorry, Benny Snell, folks. I don't think Benny Snell's the answer either. So, I don't think that's a good one, Jorge. I dig that. I dig it.
Thank you. Well, let's stick with Pittsburgh. Let's think positively, and let's assume that Ben Roethlisberger comes back. Okay, he and Deontay Johnson were like this; they were inseparable in the passing game. He was targeted the most. Does Deontay Johnson crack into the top 12? He had the few weeks where he was hurt. He had those disappointing games. Week 16 or week 15 versus the Bills. Thank you very much. Your 6.9 fantasy points were not wanted. We wanted more than that. But does he take that next step? No more Juju Smith-Schuster. I don't think Juju is going to come back to Pittsburgh, to be honest with you. I think the money is elsewhere. And if that's the case, could you make the case that Deontay Johnson is going to be a wide receiver 1, or is it just wide receiver 2, low end wide receiver 2? Mike,
Bauer, you want to go ahead? You want to take it?
I think mid to high wide receiver 2. Deontay drops in, as he was referred to late in the season. I think Claypool's going to be their 1A. To me, Johnson prototypes more as a slot receiver. And I think James Washington could be their other outside receiver there. So, running 3 wide receiver sets, Claypool, Washington, Johnson.
Did you know that Juju Smith-Schuster had the majority of wide receiver snaps on the slot last year?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
I just don't know. And, if he's gone, I just think that Johnson slides in there. I don't know what that offense is going to look like, to be honest with you. I don't know if Ben comes back. A lot of Steelers fans that I know are saying that he's going to. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do with the running game. I really don't know. There's a lot of question marks there. So I don't want to be too high on Deontay Johnson until I know who's going to be throwing him the ball. And if it's Mason Rudolph, I'm out.
No, here's the deal. I think Big Ben does come back, but I think that if Big Ben does come back, there is no way they're putting Mason Rudolph out there in week 1 as their starting quarterback. It's not going to happen. It's not. That would be NFL franchise suicide. That would be like something Cal McNair would do. No, I think Big Ben plays in 2021, but I think we saw a lot of talk about the amount of times in which they were throwing the ball. And I think they scaled that back a little bit. And that's why I think a guy like Deontay wouldn't be able to creep into that top 12, even though he's be a high reception guy, be a great DraftKings play, because he'd probably come in at a good price, probably get a lot of receptions for you. But I don't know if I could put him into a guy who's going to finish in the top 12. I truly think that the Steelers are going to bring in another running back. They're going to focus a little more on the run than they did this past year. And that's going to scoot Deontay out. But Jorge, I do agree. I do think Juju does move on.
Let's switch over to another AFC North team that I'm sure you guys are both dying to talk about. When I first approached you about this podcast, let's talk about the Bengals. Let's do that. Let's talk about the Bengals. AJ Green, his last days are probably in Cincinnati. Are his last days in the NFL gone also? No, you think he's going to sign on somewhere?
No, I think another team will pick him up. What his contribution will be, I mean, we won't see the AJ Green that we're used to, but I don't think that he's at the point where no team will give him a flyer. Okay.
What about you, Bauer? You agree?
Yeah, he's going to get picked up somewhere. But I agree 100% with Mike. Yeah, sorry, long day. I don't think he's going to be fantasy relevant, though.
Fair enough. Now, T. Higgins on the other hand, he looked really good when Joe Burrow was there. The only problem is once the injury happened, which was late in the season, there was talk that Joe Burrow might not even play next season, and you have to wait until the year after to count on him.
Already running again.
Are you ready for week 1? Who knows these days?
Yeah. I think that was a worst case scenario portrait that they painted for Burrow, understandably so, because from what I understand, I'm not a doctor, but the knee injury did sound significant. I do think that he is there next year. Do I think he misses maybe the first couple of games? Sure, there's a potential for that, but I think that he'll be able to play, and I do like T. Higgins, and I think that T. Higgins is a guy that can scratch that surface of top 12, but not get into top 12, but scratch a surface.
Right.
Be in that wide receiver, up high-end wide receiver 2 for sure.
Let's talk about a guy who is definitely drafted as a top 12 running back, and my God, Joe Mixon. What are we doing, Joe Mixon? If the Bengals don't address offensive line in the draft and in free agency, are we basically writing off Joe Mixon for another year, Bauer?
Yeah. And, a lot of people are like, oh, Mixon's receiving work. Look at his receiving work. What receiving work? Where are people getting these assumptions that Joe Mixon is a receiving back? I mean, there's catches here and there, but it's not like, people are talking him up like he's Alvin Kamara. It's crazy. And, it's funny. You look at Alvin Kamara, he's the number 1 overall running back, and he doesn't even have 1,000 yards rushing. It's insane. Derrick Henry is the 2nd overall running back, and he has 2,000 yards rushing. But then Kamara has 16 touchdowns. Let's see, 756 yards receiving and 5 touchdowns through the air. It's just that season was so amazing. And thank you, Alvin Kamara. Won me a league too.
There you go.
But yeah, the receiving work for Mixon, like where is he on this list actually?
I mean,
he's down here, right?
He's down. He's far down.
21 catches for 138 yards and 1 touchdown. Yeah. And yet people say, he's a good receiving back. Is that good?
Well, I think what that stems from, Bowers, I think people were always of the mindset that Mixon can bounce off of, say, 43 receptions in 2018. What could he turn that into? And then it was, well, he had 43 and then he had 35. What can he turn that into? But now I think we're at a point we have 4 years. 4 years is a body of work to look at Joe Mixon, which, Bauer, you're talking about now. And I think now the jury's out. I think now we can no longer talk about, oh, this is going to be the year he catches passes. No, it's been 4 years now. He hasn't caught a lot of passes. It's not going to happen. That ship has sailed. Now, Joe Mixon is going to bounce back. Joe Mixon is going to be a good running back. But this is what I talked about earlier in this show, guys. This is when I said that we really need to have a talk about these running backs that we used to value at, back end first, somewhere in the 2nd round running backs. Joe Mixon's that guy. That's a guy that listen, if he falls late enough in your drafts this summer, go ahead and take him. But if somebody wants to take him towards the top, bless their hearts, let them have him. Don't take him. Receptions will not be there. Rushing yards will be there. This is the running back. He dealt with injuries this year. But the last 2 years, he did have 1,100 yards in each of the last 2 years. So as far as rushing. So let's remember that at least. But top 12, no, it's not. No.
Not even anywhere close. No, let's go into the wide receiver 2 category really quickly. Last offseason, there was this debate in Los Angeles between these 2 wide receivers as to which is the guy that you want to draft first. And that was Robert Woods or Cooper Kupp. Which wide receiver, is the guy there, to be honest with you. And we were telling people that because, the first part of 2019, it was Cooper Kupp. He was in the top 10 in fantasy points per game, I want to say. And then you saw the shift towards Robert Woods in the back end of the season. Who's the guy you trust? It wasn't even close this year, I think. Robert Woods was the guy in that receiving game. So that begs the question, what do we do with Cooper Kupp next year? Is he still a wide receiver 2 value, or are there other options we should be considering? Mike.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot my name's Mike. Go ahead.
Your name is Bauer. You have no first name.
Sorry.
Your name is Bauer tonight. Yes, come on. Yeah, we've been here for an hour and 18 minutes, man. Act like it.
Forgive me.
Cooper Kupp, can he? I think he could. I think that there's production. Listen, this is a guy who only had 3 touchdowns, and I think that was a lot of the concern. People like me who supported Cooper Kupp, I said, well, he's a red zone guy. He's targeted a lot in the red zone. Well, didn't work out. He only had 3 touchdowns. If he has the touchdowns that were previously anticipated, he's doing pretty fine for himself. So, but I think this is a guy, and I know we talked about this off air before we started recording. I know we talked about the relationship between Sean McVay, Jared Goff. I don't think Jared Goff's the answer. I don't think he wins him a Super Bowl, but just because Jared Goff's not the answer and just because Jared Goff's not going to win a Super Bowl does not mean that he's not fantasy relevant for his wide receivers. A lot of people have trouble interpreting that and digesting that and whatever. But so I think Cooper Kupp is going to be fine. I think Cooper Kupp is going to have a better year next year. I think I think we could see 5-6 touchdowns out of Cooper Kupp, and if we do, I mean, he had 162.7 fantasy points last year in half point formats. You give him 2 more touchdowns. That's it's putting him right back up there in that territory.
Right. That's a very good point. The last person I want to talk about today, he really surprised fantasy managers. Coincidentally, his 5th-year option was not picked up. He's going to be a free agent this year. Corey Davis. He just screams to me solid wide receiver 2 value if he lands in a pass heavy situation. If he, I don't see him going to Green Bay because Green Bay is stingy, and I think they are liking the development they have with Lazard there. But I don't know. You put Corey Davis in Philadelphia, Bauer. Does he automatically become a wide receiver 2 in the wide receiver 2 category?
Never Philadelphia wide receivers. That is my
hashtag never Philadelphia wide receivers.
Never, ever. And also never trust the Philadelphia Eagles in a positive narrative. And I said that this year, and I was right. Remember that when we were talking about point spreads? Never trust them. Positive narrative. I think he might be landing spot dependent, to be honest with you. Now, honestly, a spot that I'd like him to go to is San Francisco, working alongside Brandon Ayuk. I don't know if they're going to want to pay for him. I think it would be a good spot. I would also like Las Vegas. I think would be good. Bryan Edwards and Corey Davis could be prototypical outside receivers, and Henry Ruggs, inside guy, kind of like a post guy there. Maybe Jacksonville. They're going to have some money to spend. All they really have is DJ Chark. Colin Johnson, 6th-round draft pick out of Texas, guy I like.
Yeah.
Big body, but he's just kind of there. You know what I mean? Although Jacksonville really needs a tight end bad. So interesting to see. But I think he's a wide receiver too. Like you said, I don't see him ever being a wide receiver 1.
Yeah, I do want to give Corey Davis his credit, because I was one of those guys who was a major detractor. And unlike a lot of other people, I have no problem eating my words and taking a drink to digest my bad words.
Nice.
I was really hard on Corey Davis. I said Corey Davis would be absolutely nothing, and I was dead wrong. Absolutely dead wrong. Corey Davis he's going to get himself paid this offseason. Paid as a top wide receiver? No, obviously not. Let's not overreact.
Right.
But I do think it is a little bit dependent on where he lands. I don't think he goes to San Francisco, only because I don't think San Francisco will pay, because they're going to have a lot of other areas that they need to fill, like that secondary, for example. I think that's going to be a source of concern for them. But yeah, if he lands in the right spot, like you mentioned, the Las Vegas Raiders, I dig that. Yeah, there's definitely potential to be had there with Corey Davis. Wide receiver 1, top end wide receiver 2, though. I think he could creep up that way. I think he could.
What about the Jets?
I was literally Bauer.
You guys are simpatico.
Great minds. They have Mims. That's it.
Crowder. They have Crowder.
They have Crowder. He's a slot guy, short route guy.
He's great for PPR.
He fantastic. I love Jamison Crowder. I had him in a ton of leagues last year, and every time he was active, I played him. I didn't care about the matchup because I knew Darnold, Flacco would look for him. But Perryman's going to be a free agent. He only signed a 1-year deal. They'll probably have some money to spend. Salah bringing in a veteran guy that could work with whoever is playing quarterback there. Hope Darnold gets into
the contract, by the way, with the Jets, FYI.
Who's that?
Crowder. This is his last year under contract with the Jets.
Ah, interesting. Did not know that. You are all on top of this. I'm very thankful that you were on the show covering that. That's very good. Good to know. Actually, let me talk about one more wide receiver, just because, Bauer, you've been here plenty of times, but Mike, this is your first time joining us, and thank you very much for coming on Fourth and Frames. Deebo Samuel, wide receiver for the 49ers. Brandon Ayuk kind of took over the reins a little bit towards the end of last season. What are our thoughts on Deebo going into 2021?
I think Deebo, and you know what? I have to give a little bit of credit here. Matt Barr is with the Fourth and Goal podcast. That is, if you're a 49er guy, or if you're looking for 49er information, that's where you go to. So 4th and goal, Matt Barr. I retweet his stuff a lot, so you can find him out there. Just look up 4th and Gold, and you'll find their podcast. But point being, I don't want to act like I'm taking words out of his mouth, but he basically said on the last podcast, which is so true, they need to put Deebo Samuel in a better situation than where he is right now. And point being, they need to stop using him like a running back all the time. I understand that he's like a running back. I understand that he's like a bull. I understand that he wants to just run through tacklers. That's great. I love it. But it's not good for his health, clearly. It's not good for his durability. So I think they're going to have to try and find a way to put him in some better spots, some more slants. And I think that will help him. But Brandon Ayuk is, to me, I think Brandon Ayuk for fantasy is better next year than Deebo Samuel is, even if Deebo Samuel is healthy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think Brandon Ayuk, I think we look at it as everybody always talks about now how, and I'm sorry, Bauer, but everybody talks about how Justin Jefferson, man, I can't believe that he got drafted and the Eagles took Jalen Reagor. I think next year, I think we're going to be talking about not better than Justin Jefferson, because I love Justin Jefferson. But I think we're going to be talking a lot about Brandon Ayuk and being like, I can't believe the talent that this kid is, and that not a lot of people had him on, or the average football fan did not have him on their radar.
I loved him coming out of Arizona State. I liked him better than N'Keal Harry.
Yeah, and that was who Kyle Shanahan wanted previously and didn't get him, so they made sure he got Ayuk this time around. Shanahan wanted N'Keal Harry previously.
Didn't they trade up to get Ayuk?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And when Kyle Shanahan trades up to get someone, you need to pay attention to that. Especially that game where Ayuk was a late scratch and he said 85% of our plays were scripted for Brandon Ayuk. That tells you something. It's got to tell you something. And he's an amazing talent, and I think he's got to be in the conversation. You know, he missed some time. I know wasn't he on the COVID list like twice, and I think one of them was false positive, some BS like that. But he did miss some time. But
played in 12 games. He finished as the 33rd wide receiver in half-point formats.
Without his starting quarterback, because Garoppolo missing a bunch of time. He's playing with CJ Beathard and Nick Mullins. So
is Garoppolo the starting quarterback this year? If you had to put a name on a person, would it be a rookie? But you don't have to name a name. Is it a veteran or is it a rookie?
I'll name a name. I don't give a shit.
Okay.
No, I think I would love to see them trade up for Zach Wilson. That's my personal opinion, as per my Twitter header. I know a lot of people do bring up Justin Fields. I don't think the Niners are going to trade up to, with the Jets there. But I think the Niners can be in play for a Zach Wilson. If it's not a Zach Wilson, I'd be okay with going ahead and going and get Matt Ryan, Matthew Stafford, something to that effect. I mentioned it earlier. Stafford just needs to be in the right spot. That's the big thing. And Matt Ryan, obviously, clearly is familiar with the Kyle Shanahan system. So, will I fall out of my chair if Garoppolo is the quarterback next year on week 1? No, I won't. Will I be mad? No, I won't. But I don't think that he is. Listen. They said he was the guy last year, but they called but they called Tom Brady before Tom Brady. I'm trying to say Tampa Bay. Before Tom Brady went to Tampa Bay, they spoke to Tom Brady, and so really, how loyal are you to Jimmy Garoppolo? It's a very easy contract to get out of. San Francisco does a very good job of team-friendly contracts. So no, I don't think it's there.
Well, there we go. Well, folks, thank you very much for sticking with us and watching our very special Fourth and Frames broadcast here. I want to thank Michael Hauff of the FF Faceoff. Love your podcast. Been listening to it for years, watching you guys for years in a non-creepy way. And it's been fantastic. You guys put out great work. Again, huge fans. Looking forward to the Haydenhurst marathon again this year if you guys do it again. And whatever additions you make to that. It was a great cause last year. I was very proud to be a part of it. And so thank you very much for joining us. We got to have you back on soon, man.
That's it, man. Just shine the bat signal. I'll be there next time. I'll drag Anthony's carcass over too.
There you go. That works. And we'd love to have Anthony Servino join us. Big fan of Anthony. Bauer, as always, it's fantastic having you on. looking forward to getting all of your help with all the Dynasty content we're going to be producing here at Fantasy and Frames. So stay tuned for that. And if you're a fantasy baseball fan, just putting it out there, we do cover fantasy baseball here at fantasyandframes.com. Head over and check out our Perfectly Framed podcast, where we cover relief pitching this year in 2021. We are specializing specifically in relief pitching. So Aaron Pags and Nate Markham and Todd Barnes, give them a follow on Twitter. And for everybody else, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.